Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right in today, opening up an absolutely fascinating piece of biblical history. We're looking specifically at the Book of Esther, chapter 2, verses 19 through 23. Now, on the surface, this passage reads straight up like a political thriller. But just beneath that surface, it reveals this profound, overarching theme of God's unseen providence. In a world where it honestly often feels like we're just at the total mercy of chaotic, random events, this text really shows us how invisible hands are constantly, quietly shaping history. Okay, let's dive into this because this is a highly relatable human problem. Have you ever done the exact right thing? Like maybe you went totally above and beyond at your job, or you sacrificed something huge for your family, only to be completely 100% forgotten. No thank you, no recognition, just literal silence. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Well, as we connect this ancient text to our modern lives today, keep that specific feeling in mind, because our main character is about to experience that exact same thing, but on a massive scale. Section 1. Inside the Palace Gates. To really get how this all unfolds, we've got to quickly step back into the historical setting. We're talking about the massive Persian Empire under the notoriously erratic King Ahasuerus. Now just look at the wild contrast between our two main characters here. Both of them are Jewish exiles, so a marginalized group in a totally foreign land. Yet miraculously, Esther has just been crowned queen. She's living deep within the royal palace. Meanwhile, her adoptive father Mordecai has been appointed to sit at the king's gates. So you have these two seemingly insignificant exiles who are now perfectly positioned right at the beating heart of world power. No way that's a coincidence, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this detail is the cultural context behind that phrase. When the text says Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, he wasn't just, hanging around or loitering like some low-level guard. Actually, in the ancient Near East, sitting at the palace gate meant you held a real official administrative post. He was a recognized government official. This gave him a totally legitimate reason to be there, and more importantly, it granted him vital access to palace personnel, the eunuchs, and the whole flow of critical palace intelligence.
And while Mordecai is working the gate, Esther is navigating life as queen. But catch this dynamic. Despite wearing the literal royal crown, Esther still strictly obeyed Mordecai, exactly like she did when she was a kid. She kept her Jewish identity a complete secret, just as he instructed. I mean, talk about deep, enduring humility. Her status skyrocketed, but her character stayed totally grounded. And, crucially, her hidden identity wasn't just a secret. It was God secretly protecting a future rescue plan from being blown too early. Which brings us to the inciting incident today. Section 2, a deadly assassination plot. The tone here shifts abruptly from palace administration to a high-stakes intelligence operation. See, despite all its unimaginable wealth and military might, the Persian Empire was basically a boiling pot of power struggles and deadly plots. Two trusted palace eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, guys who literally guarded the king's doorway, get absolutely furious with King Ahasuerus. We don't even know what their grievance was, but they decided to turn on the king and hatched a plot to assassinate the most powerful man in the known world. And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme urgency and the flawless teamwork they used to stop a total disaster. Step 1. Mordecai, acting in his official capacity at the gate, uncovers this deadly plot. Now, he doesn't just run screaming to the king. That would breach strict palace protocols and honestly probably get him killed. Instead, step 2. He uses his secure connection to alert Queen Esther. Then, step 3. Esther reports the conspiracy to the king, explicitly doing so in Mordecai's name. It's a flawless chain of command. So, the intel gets passed along, an intense investigation is launched, and the plot is confirmed. And then, boom, swift and brutal justice. Bigthan and Teresh are hanged on a tree. And then, a really important administrative detail happens. This entire event, including Mordecai's heroic deed in saving the king's life, is officially documented in the royal chronicles, right in front of the king himself. The kingdom is safe, Mordecai is a hero. The end, right? Well, not quite. Section 3. The Forgotten Hero. Because right about now, we expect a grand celebration, a huge parade, a chest full of gold, but instead we get this massive, jarring anticlimax. It is stated so plainly by the sheer silence of the text, Mordecai receives absolutely no reward, no honor, no promotion.
The guy literally saves the life of the wealthiest, most powerful ruler on the planet, an act that is officially verified and recorded in the books, and he gets zilch. Absolutely nothing. It is just a stunning oversight.
And oh, to make matters worse, as we look at the contrast, moving into the very next chapter, we see this massive, glaring injustice. Mordecai is completely ignored and forgotten, but Haman, a wicked, arrogant official, he gets suddenly promoted by the king to second in command shortly after this whole event. The guy who saved the king is completely forgotten, and the ultimate villain gets the huge promotion. Talk about a frustrating workplace dynamic.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader narrative of the text. Because this wasn't just some administrative HR error, it's a masterclass in divine timing. Just look at the timeline. First, you have the rescue, where Mordecai gets nothing. Then, years pass. Haman, now in power, plots to literally exterminate all the Jews. The tension is at absolute peak levels. And then finally, the reversal. Out of nowhere, on a random night, the king can't sleep, asks for the royal chronicles to be read to him, and discovers Mordecai was never rewarded. He decides to honor Mordecai at the exact, precise moment it's needed to kick off the downfall of Haman and the salvation of the Jewish people. What the source text teaches us here is absolutely profound. Human forgetting creates a perfect time buffer for God's ultimate rescue. Think about it. If Mordecai had been rewarded immediately, he probably would have just gotten, a bag of silver and a pat on the back. But because it was delayed, his reward became the literal catalyst to save an entire nation. It's so similar to the story of Joseph in Genesis, who was forgotten in prison for 2 full years, only to be remembered at the exact moment Pharaoh needed him. God doesn't always act on our rushed timeline. He often hides things until the absolute perfect, most impactful moment. Section 4. 3 Lessons on Providence. Let's transition from this historical thriller and unpack some highly practical takeaways for us today. We're going to quickly overview 3 big reflections: understanding your current position and station, the necessity of everyday discipleship, and how to actually deal with a delayed reward. So, the crucial point is really this first lesson: your position. It is so easy to look at our jobs, our neighborhoods, or our social standing and think it's all just random chance. But whether you are placed in a high, highly influential position like Esther, or a lower, administrative, everyday role like Mordecai at the gate, you are placed there by God's unseen hand for a specific, beautiful purpose. If you're in a low position, don't despise it. Find peace in it. If you're in a high position, don't be arrogant. Stay humble. God is using your exact placement for a much larger plan. Lesson 2 is all about discipleship. Think about Esther for a second. Even as queen of the empire, she actively trusted her mentor, Mordecai. She listened to him. Their deep mutual trust is what allowed them to act so quickly and save the king. And it really begs the question for us, right? Are you actively trusting a mentor in your own life? Are you walking alongside fellow believers, spiritual comrades who you can openly share your joys, your weaknesses, your mess-ups, and your victories with? We really aren't meant to navigate the palaces or the gates of this world alone. And finally, lesson 3, the delayed reward. Honestly, this is probably the toughest one. When you pour your absolute heart into your work, your family, or your company, and it goes completely unnoticed, when someone else takes the credit or gets the promotion, man, it stings. But the text urges us to maintain a peaceful, joyful, and faithful heart, just like Mordecai did, because human oversight does not equal divine amnesia. The source material pairs this perfectly with a huge encouragement from the New Testament, Colossians chapter 3. It says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." That is the ultimate perspective shift, isn't it? It reminds us exactly who we're truly working for, even when the humans around us completely forget to say thank you. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Look at your own life, especially those areas where you feel overlooked or totally unappreciated. Where might God's unseen hand be quietly at work in those forgotten areas of your life right now, today? Because just like Mordecai, your current hiddenness might actually be God's perfect preparation for a massive future rescue. So keep working faithfully and keep your eyes wide open for that divine timing. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.